When you say the darkest person you've ever met, what does that mean?
He got a rush off of hurting people, but he was also one of them guys that's very quiet. He's older now, but back then, he was a very quiet, like mostly even the other inmates in there didn't like him. He was what they call a special pie flap inmate, where he didn't just have the
Single.
pie flap. They were all in single cells, but he didn't have just the pie flap where you would tray their food in. His had like a drawer outside where you would put the food in the drawer, lock that door, and then open the pie flap on the inside. Because he had cut several officers, he knew how to just be slick and he just grab your arm and pull it through the pie flap and just take a knife and just start.
Golly.
So.
We had somebody reach out to us.
Yeah.
Who went on Ian Bick's show.
Okay.
Obviously, we've done that,
Bick,
both of us. We have David Beechy with us today, who I didn't realize when you first reached out that you're from Ohio.
Yes, sir.
Ohio. You're from Ohio.
Yep, born and raised. I've lived other states, but loop back around to
Always come back,
the
right?
good old Buckeyes.
So that worked out.
That was beautiful.
So great. Like when you reached out, I was like, oh, perfect. He's in Ohio. I had no idea. But that's that's cool. Tell us about where you grew up, because I know it was a small town, sounds like, and how your childhood looked.
Down Morgan County, Ohio. So if people hear my last name, everybody down there knew my dad. I think I was out in the country, but the town closest to us had like one gas station, a bank that's now closed, and 200 residents. So
Tiny.
Tiny, yeah, tiny.
Very tiny.
One stoplight kind of situation.
Yes. And I think they had 13 drug overdoses last year in the little town of 200 residents.
And have 200.
Doesn't surprise me.
It's a good place for you to find some great
It's like
guests that are
5% of your population is dead.
Well, the
It
Midwest.
was a lot.
Wow.
The Midwest has been ravaged by opiates.
Imagine drug prices in like a tiny county like that, because you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it'd be, it's probably hard to find, right? So you're probably paying buku crazy money for.
It doesn't surprise me to hear those numbers at all, though.
Yeah, those might not be exact, but it's pretty close. It's wild.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Is what it is. I wish I had this statistic on like overdose deaths in America and how like it's above so many things you wouldn't expect it to be above.
Yeah.
It's bad. So.
Yep.
Tell us more though. Tell us more about your childhood.
I grew up Amish, so I probably still smell like horses a little bit.
Okay. So you grew up Amish.
And like, what kind of Amish we talking here? Like no electricity Amish?
Are there
No, very conservative Amish.
Like,
no electricity, no. They were proud to be like the second most conservative United States.
So not like what's the Mennonites that have like some.
Wait, hold on. There's different kinds of Amish?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Tell us about that.
There's basically everything. They're like, what would that compare to? Your normal churches will have different denominations that are more liberal, more conservative.
Okay.
The Amish are like that. Each group will have its own set of rules. And so there's some that will, like my favorite rule we had was on how you could thread your shoes. We had rules on how to thread those, your shirt cuff collars, how many buttons you could have on your shirt, how wide your hat brim was, how wide the band was going around your straw hat. The straw hat had to be made within the community, like all those rules that the more modern ones will be like, put a hat on your head, like, or don't, or like,
Wow.
We had to wear suspenders. They had to be a particular width. I think it was an inch wide.
Wow.
Yeah, they get really.
And then what's that about? Is that like a religious standard? Like, what's the point of all that?
It's supposed to be a religious standard, but I think it's a lot of like, they kind of get into who can be holier than thou contest. Okay. The more conservative ones do. And so, well, if that group's hat bands are 6 inches wide, then if we go 7 inches, God will love us more.
Wow.
Like it's just
dang.
dumb.
That's
competing for
Sorry
God's
to come
love.
out offensive, but it's just dumb. Like it's not in the Bible. Bible doesn't tell you how wide your hat brim should be.
But that's like like a statement that's an example of something you've heard. Like
it's like an unspoken
it's an unspoken thing.
Wow.
But they will, the more conservative ones will have wider hats. So if you're out in public and you see Amish, if they have a really narrow hat brim, they're from a more modern community. If their hat brim is look like a sombrero, they're more conservative.
They're, yeah.
Yep.
Now, my whole Amish idea comes from the movie Kingpin. Have you ever seen it? Yes. That's the only knowledge I have, right? Is that like, you guys really work, or what is it? Like, you work what we work plus another half? Like, if we work 8 hours, you guys do 12-hour days. Is that legit?
They work a lot, but when you do everything manually, you're going to work a lot. So, like, the group I was from, we didn't have farm tractors in the field. When we milk cows, you milk them by hand. So,
Wow.
where a normal farmer might milk, 300 cows in 30 minutes or an hour with milkers, if an Amish person milked 300 cows, they'd have to have, like, 20 generations of kids, and just doing it by hand, it takes, I'm going to go nuts and say 15 or 20 minutes per cow, milking a cow by hand.
Wow.
And with the electronic milker system, they might milk 20 cows at a time in that 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So when you take all that stuff in consideration, it's amazing how much technology has sped us up, how much more stuff you get done in a day.
I'm curious, obviously, how old are you?
40.
40.
Sorry.
Okay. So,
I'm at that
I'm
age where it doesn't matter.
I'm 34. No, but with the electricity thing, and like cell phones and all that, how does that work?
We did not have any kind of electricity or phones. There are a lot of the more modern ones now. I'd probably say the majority of the Amish now will have cell phones. They have different rules. Like, some of them can only talk on it. Some of them can talk and text. Some of them can have internet. I think most of them don't really allow like an iPhone, a smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
iPhone's the only smartphone that counts.
I know. I'll drink to that one.
Android, baby. Android.
So no electricity growing up at all?
No. Not
So
at all.
how does that affect you? Tell us about, like, how did you like it growing up Amish as a kid? How did that look? Like,
that was the only thing I knew as a kid, and so I didn't mind it. Like, it was just another day at the office.
sure.
The great pro benefit to it is my brain is different. Some people probably call it left. What do they say?
Left brain?
Left brain.
Yeah.
I'm very left brain. But the house, for instance, was so quiet. I remember as a kid sleeping upstairs, and I could hear the clocks ticking on the walls downstairs.
Wow.
Because you don't realize how much noise refrigerators and your furnace kicking on, all that stuff make.
Interesting.
And so it's just a very quiet. Your entertainment is, well, you're working a lot, so it's not a lot of entertainment. But, like, we might sit around the evenings during the winter, and Mom might read a book out loud, or eating popcorn, or playing checkers and stuff. So it's all, your activities are all things that you are doing with your brain instead of where you're watching a video or a podcast.
Yeah.
Your brain just kind of flows with it, and you don't really think as much about what you're doing. So
I have to believe that's just healthier.
I mean, probably.
in
like,
some
we're
way,
made.
I have to believe that.
Yeah,
that's...
our like humans were made to like not have all this extra shit to like distract us, right? So, but like, did you ever see like the I don't want to say normal kids in town, but you know, people in their cars and their phones, and you ever like, man, what's that like?
Yes, yeah, a lot. By the time I was probably 10 or 11, I knew there was coming a day where I was not going to be Amish no more.
Really?
I just knew,
It's like it's coming.
Yep. I was the oddball. My family was poor, so I was kind of that weird Amish kid. You would think Amish wouldn't have a pecking order, but I kind of was, and so I was like, this is not.
Really? So there's like cliques in Amish communities.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tell us
Yep,
about
very much so.
school for you. And I'm curious because I think that most kids, when they get into high school, and I don't know if you ever drank or did drugs or anything like that, and we'll get into your profession, some of what you did previously in a little bit, but going into high school, what was that, or going into school Amish, what was that like? And do you see drugs and alcohol in a community like that?
Our particular community, no, but it is very common because our community was really small. There was only like in the mid-20s families, but in the bigger communities, kids are kids. They'll get together and party, and they're drinking warm, nasty beer.
Oh, yeah.
But if you go to bigger Amish communities, it's fairly common to see where they'll bust up, like go up to Holmes County. It's very common for them to bust up Amish barn parties and stuff where there'll be like 50 or 100 underage kids in there, and they're all just hammered out. And then they're running across the fields in the middle of the night trying to get away from the cops and stuff. So,
what about like harder drugs in the Amish community? I'm curious.
I'm sure it is, but drinking is the most common thing that you hear of.
Okay.
From my perspective, I've kind of disconnected from a lot of them.
Okay.
And I was 16 and I'm 40 now, so it's a long time ago. But
16 is when you left the Amish life.
Yep.
So did you do that thing? What is it called? Rumspringer?
Oh,
is that legitimate?
Not in the way that Hollywood makes it sound like it is.
So my idea of it is like, at a certain age in the Amish community, you have a choice. Like, okay, you go out and experience the real world, and if you like it, you go. If you don't, you come back.
That's what people think it is, but no, because if that was the thing, they would have like no Amish.
Way less of an Amish community.
Yeah. When you experience AC and automobiles,
game changer.
That freaking horse at 5 miles an hour, that's not the thing no more. So no, if you go to like the more modern ones, their young folk will do what the outside world sees as Rumspringa, but it's not really. It's just kids that are, because if you're not baptized, and they usually don't baptize you till around 16 or 17, and if you're not baptized into the church, your parents are the authority over you, not as much the preachers and stuff. So the preachers can put pressure on your parents, but when you're a kid at 17, 18, 19 years old, you're going to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so they will go do that. They'll have lights on their buggies that they're not supposed to and have like boom boxes in them. You see like Facebook Reels and TikToks and stuff like that. Like that's not necessarily they're in Rumspringa. That's just Amish kids going wild.
They're just rebelling a little bit.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they're not baptized into the church. So the preachers are not going to be knocking on their door going, hey, how about we excommunicate you? So
that like okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So at some point you end up working at this prison, and we'll get there. But when you left the Amish community at 16, right? And I assume you're going to work. What's that whole thing look like when you leave, and then what do you do next, and career wise, or you're young at that time, but.
Yeah. So how it started is they excommunicated my mom, which is basically shunning you, kicked her out for believing that she can know, according to the Bible, whether she's saved or not. And I'm like, that's you guys' whole religion thing.
Isn't that the Bible, period? Like
exactly. But they say that if you say you know you're going to heaven, you're judging. And so you're going to hell. But then you're judging by telling me I'm going to hell. So
yeah.
So it's an interesting, but anyway, they excommunicated my mom, and because I was underage, I just chose to go with her side of the split. That's how I got out. Yeah.
And what's your dad do then? Is he just like, well, you're done. Sorry.
He's still Amish. They separated. They stayed in the same house for a while. They moved to 2 different bedrooms because once you're excommunicated, they really don't want you to have any real interaction with anybody. Yeah. So she could cook a full meal, and he could have not ate for 3 days, and she cook a full meal, and he can't go eat it. Because Satan is in the food. So,
whoa!
Satan is in the food.
It's an interesting thing.
That is fascinating.
That's pretty. That's pretty strict, man. Which
pretty
is
intense.
Crazy because like if they're readers of the Bible, like the Bible is clearly not saying
exactly.
Yeah. So it's just
but
weird to me.
I have learned since I've been out over the last few years. I've really learned that the human brain, you can teach someone something that they can see with their own eyes, and you can convince them what you're telling them versus what they're seeing.
Yeah.
And the Amish is a good example for that, to where like they won't drive a car, which some of that stuff they do. The Bible talks about being separate from the world, and so that's their version of that. And I'm like,
so they just manipulate that.
It doesn't mean physically. Like,
yeah.
And so, but they know it's not in the Bible about driving a car, but they're convinced they're going to hell for doing it. I'm like, but where's it at? Like, show me.
Yeah, show me where it says thou shalt not drive a
automobile.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you leave, what do you do next? Like, what happens next for you at 16?
I stayed at home on the farm. My first, I don't think it was an official job. We worked as a subcontractor for our local township. It's down in basically Appalachia, so there's a lot of roadside dumps. People don't pay for garbage service. They just find a back road and throw it. So my first job was riding a bicycle. Me and my older brother would ride our bikes to wherever they would send us to, and we'd go pull dead tires and garbage up, stack it on the side of the road, and then the township truck would come through and pick it up. We did that for I think basically a whole summer that we did that. And then the next gig was the next summer was mowing cemeteries for the same township. So
manual labor is all you really knew.
Up until I started trucking.
And you're still Amish at this point, or you
No,
started?
he's
I was no longer. If
You're
you would have
out,
seen me,
okay.
you'd have been like, that dude's Amish.
Okay.
But I wasn't a part of the group no more. No, our group didn't even allow bicycles. A lot of them do. The more modern ones will. But our group, we were not even allowed bicycles. So they would have.
Go ahead.
They would have kicked me out just by the fact I was riding a bicycle and working for the township. They don't have anything to do with the government, and the township's run by the government. So that would have been against the rules too.
That is.
And then what do you do? Like, what did you? So you go with your mom. She eventually moves out, I'm assuming.
No, she's still on the same
She's
farm
still-
to this day.
To this day.
Oh wow.
Yep, one of my brothers has bought it since
What?
then. But yep, she's still on the same farm.
So she lived 24 years of just being shunned by the community and just there as a body.
Pretty much.
Good.
Interesting.
Golly.
She's a homebody. That's more of a homebody than, But anyway, yep.
So I'm curious. You all you know is manual labor in the farm and these tough jobs. At what point do you say I'm going to go work at a prison, and why?
Let's see. I had left home and I lived in Indiana at the time, and I wanted to get into law enforcement. So I
Okay.
got a gig working for a local security company in Indianapolis that did armed security for like banks and gas stations and things that were in areas of town that people shouldn't.
Sure.
I got a job doing that, and it was the most boring thing ever.
You didn't like it.
It was so boring.
Okay.
You're standing in a grocery store for like 5-6 hours inside the door, just standing there to be visible. That will make you see
Yeah,
colors
yeah.
or something. Yeah.
Where are you living?
I was living in Indianapolis, just north of Indianapolis at the time.
Okay.
I had two brothers that went out there. One of them went for college, the other one went for work, and so
So you had some
then it
people
left the
out there.
Amish. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And so I wanted out of Morgan County.
So did you want to be a cop?
I did. I thought I did. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's why.
So you started with the security gig.
Yep. And
Okay.
I like the idea of it. Like I said, it was boring as can be. And then I was at one of my buddy's house one night, and we were just messing around online. He always wanted to move to Nashville to do music.
Okay.
And so I was like, I don't have anything holding me here. We were both single, weren't dating anybody. He's like, why don't, and so I'm like, if you apply, or no, I said, I will go down there and get a job, and then you just move in with me and you do the music, if I can get a job at the prison. So I just went on and Googled, and the freaking Riverbend Maximum Security was the prison that came up. I think I called them that night. And they said, well, go online and do an application and then call in tomorrow and talk to some southern lady. And so I did. And she did a little phone interview with me and was like, well, you have to be a resident of the state to hire you. Like, okay, but I don't want to move to the state unless I have the job. And she's like, well, if everything checks out, basically I had the job. And so I did.
Wow.
I went down and they interviewed, and
How do you do all this? Because like you have no background, right? Technically, like you don't no work history.
Got that one piece on your resume.
the only thing I had on my resume was the private security.
Security gig, yeah.
Yeah, the armed security in Indy, and that was it. It's Tennessee, at least back then, they were understaffed and way underpaid, and pretty much if you could stand up straight and drive your own car in
You're
there,
hired.
You have
You're
the job.
hired.
They were like, well, a dead body's better than nobody, so
right.
you come on in.
And corrections,
Yeah,
that can be the case. That can be the
It's-
case.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
And so what was the facility called? Riverbend Maximum?
Riverbend Maximum Security, they're 15, 20 minutes outside of Nashville.
Before you
little bit outside.
called and applied, did you do any look into the
What
facility
you're
at
getting-
all?
what you're getting into?
Or were
Not
you
at
just
all.
like, okay, this
was-
is the next logical step?
It was literally me. And I was only, let's see, I was in my mid-20s. I was only 10 years out of the Amish. The internet was still kind of a new thing. I didn't even know how to Google stuff. My friend was doing the Googling and pulling up all their information. I knew nothing about it.
Because you're essentially like a baby in the world, like learning everything at the same time,
Yeah,
like how to
that
use
too.
a phone,
Yeah.
a smartphone, or anything.
Yeah, I don't think smartphones were even a thing back then. I'm sure they weren't. I didn't get a smartphone until like 2011 or 12.
Yeah.
Damn.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I just
On a
literally
whim.
just, yeah. And the whole time through, and my whole life, half my life is that way where I'm like, oh, dude, I can't believe I'm doing this. And then you're at the next place, you're like, oh, that door just opened. I guess I'm just going on through this stage.
That's life.
That is
So,
crazy.
but yeah, when I was down there doing my interview, I think it's my first interview. I did 2 total interviews. And I
So
think it was
you moved to Tennessee or Nashville? Is that what you did?
my buddy had a buddy that was renting a basement off of another guy.
Use that address.
And so I went down there and stayed at his house for the week. And they had, I think, 2 interviews scheduled that week. So we did the interviews, and they said, yes, I have the job. I had, I think, 90 days to switch my license and my residence to Tennessee. And so I went back home, and I think I had like 1 week before the academy started.
And you were going to say something about that first interview? Something about...
Yeah, in the interview, there was a question she had about something. I can't remember what it was. And so I said, well, I grew up Amish. And she was like, like, we'll go through whatever, but I just wouldn't tell the inmates that because he'll get a hard time with it. And then
Interesting.
later I realized I would have got a hard time with it, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
So,
They'll exploit anything, man.
Yeah. And I was already a pale, scrawny, little redheaded kid. Little gingers that...
Just stuck out.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed the time there, though.
All right.
But,
well, tell us.
Yeah,
so,
day one.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, you get this job. Or the academy? What kind of training do they give you before you start?
I should have Googled this to know the facts. It's either 6 or 8 weeks of academy. It's not very... And it's...
Then when you say academy, like, what does that mean? Like, what does that look like?
Their academy is in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's an old military army barracks or something like that, I think. I'd have to look that up again. But it's the paper side I struggle with doing like the classroom because I never sat in like a classroom setting. In the Amish school, our schoolwork was kind of like almost like a homework style of schoolwork, and so I wasn't used to like lecture classes and taking notes. So I had no idea what I was taking notes for, and that part I struggled through. But as far as your physical training and stuff was very simple. We had PE every morning, and you would basically go do crunches, go walk, it was bare minimal. It was
just get in shape, kind of. As best
barely
you can.
pretend that you're
the
pretend
illusion of being in shape.
We're not going to pressure you too hard because half of them already quit, so we don't want the last half to.
Okay.
Basically.
So they get you as prepared as they can, I guess.
6 to 8 weeks.
Without you quitting, yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And then you've never, other than the security gig, done anything like this.
Correct.
So let's go to day one. Let's hear about you walk in and.
I had toured the prison before I went to the academy, but the day one they gave us a couple weeks of on-job training. We had to be with another CO in the department, but I don't remember doing the tour, how that was. But I remember going in there to work the first day, and you hear the doors closing behind you and stuff. Like that's a weird going from Amish hearing horses' hoofs in the field to going to hearing that door. Those big, yes, yep. And even as a CO, you're like, it'll get you. It gets you a little bit because you can only get back out on the graces and the electricity of someone else hitting that button and open that door up. So if they decide to, or like for some reason power goes out in some crazy nuclear strike or something, you're rotting in there with,
And I'm assuming like when you take the job, you know what you're getting into, right? Like these are dangerous people. The worst of the worst in there.
Yes, I knew it was a maximum security institution when I applied there, but I didn't, like I said, all of this stuff, I didn't think it through. I was practically a kid still. I was just like, no, this is a great adventure in law enforcement.
It seems like the next logical step. It really does. It makes sense.
And it was a great experience, and it probably would be if you wanted. There was several guys that went from there into the police department, so it is a logical direction to go into.
We'll jump from that to parole or probation. A lot of different avenues.
Yep.
Okay, so day one, you're hearing the doors. It's rattling you a little bit. What's your feeling on like the inmates, and how do you view them early on as you
put your tough guy face on?
Yeah, tell us about it.
A face like this doesn't have a tough guy face.
There is no tough guy face.
Take about 50 pounds off of this in 10 years. There's no tough guy face. I believe my first day was in Unit 1, which was a max unit, and it wasn't death row. This was like regular max unit where they're locked down 23 hours a day, and it's a rough place. Like, it's a dark place. The inmates in there are known for like kicking. Have you been locked up? I can't remember your story.
We both have.
If you guys ever been where they kick the doors, I don't know what they call it, but they'll just stand
Where they
there.
pop them open, you mean?
No,
They
like
attempt to, except it doesn't
the
pop
inmates
open.
will just
Oh,
like
yeah,
slam the
just
doors,
yeah,
kick
yeah,
the
yeah,
doors.
yeah,
they'll
yeah.
stand there, turn their back to the door, and take
And
their
just
heels
pound
and just
on it like a
pound them.
mule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And so you walk in, and if they're all pounding the doors, it's so loud, like you can't talk to the person right next to you. It's just you can't hear anything. You're in a 2-foot high or 2-story high concrete empty structure. It echoes so bad.
Yeah.
And the guys are screaming and cussing at you, and like it's wild. That will make your
That's
brain
terrifying.
spin.
I'm
It is,
terrified
yes.
just living it through you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's wild. So that was my first introduction to it. And then I was helping guys, or I was there observing / helping guys shackle up. Because in that unit, they had to be shackled behind their back and their leg irons on, even just to get them out of their cell. And then you got to take them and lock them in to take their showers. They get like a 10 or 15-minute shower.
You had to put leg shackles on them to get them out of the cell too, not
They-
just the cuffs.
Correct. They make them back up to the pie flap,
Yep.
the little opening in the
Yep.
door, put their hand shackles on,
Yep.
and then make them go kneel on the bed and then go put their leg shackles on.
Okay.
Had to be 2 officers per inmate to get them out to then go. So
Wow.
when they're doing, like, take them out to the rec yard, they'll put them out on the rec yard like that in a big freaking cages, and they'll be in the cage for 1 hour. So you'll spend your whole shift is shackling people, moving to the rec yard. By the time you get the last guy out, it's time for the first guys to come back in. So you're shackling everybody, reshackling them back up, bringing them back in. It's a lot of work, and then that's why people get sloppy and get hurt.
And at no point in this are you ever like when you're doing your first couple shackle ups, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, these guys got to be shackled to go to the rec yard. Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, I had those thoughts, but at the same time, I was like, well, I want to do law enforcement.
Yeah.
This is a great
It's
experience,
just a means to an end.
right?
No, I
But
mean
it's-
it makes sense. It does. Like that's the experience you need to take the next step.
Yep, and it changes your view on people. It really does.
Tell
When you're
us
around-
about that.
I've not been able to grasp that to this day yet. But being around other humans, that it's kind of like the chicken come before the egg. But where they're locked up in those little 8x10 cells, and they legitimately would hurt you if they could get out and hurt you. It's just a wild thing. It's like they're a human being, but yet growing up around farm animals, you're kind of like,
Like,
yeah, it's crazy. It's dark. It's wild. I've never been able to fully grasp that. I still don't understand it. I would love to go meet. I've talked to him a little bit. And he wants to set it up. Dane Gentry. He has his own little podcast. He was on
Okay.
Ian Bick's podcast. That's how
Okay.
I knew about him. But he is one that is now out in the regular, normal world, and he was in Unit 1. He wasn't there during the time I was. I was really hoping he was. So I would just love to sit down and meet a
Yeah.
guy that was on the opposite side of that wall.
I'd watch that. Yeah.
That I was scared to death of. It's just I don't know. It'd be kind
So
of a closure for me.
That's so
Does this
interesting.
affect, like, okay, so you're going working every day and then going back in your community? Does it like not make you not trust everybody in the world?
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
I'm so suspect of everybody just being in
Yes.
prison.
That-
I don't trust a soul.
See, it's so fascinating because when I went into corrections after I was locked up, my viewpoint was very different. Because I was them, right? It's like that's how I saw it, and I knew I had a job to do, but I also knew I could gain respect because they knew I walked in their shoes, and it did make a difference. So I didn't like walk in with all this fear because I had already been locked up, and I was just like, I know what goes down in here. I know what to expect, so on and so
Yeah.
forth. It was almost better training than they could have ever given me, was to be locked up prior to working in corrections. So was Unit 1 your first assigned unit when you started, like when you were live? CO, no more training, no more buddy?
No, I got assigned to Unit 2, which is Death Row Unit. They just had me for the training. They try to make you work every unit just to
Okay.
kind of know how each one runs. But I didn't know this at the time. But when I was going through the academy, they keep kind of like a report card on you and report back to the prison. And the Sarge for Unit 2 at that time had already selected me because of, I guess because I was a timid kid. I don't know why. I have no idea. I never asked him, and I should have asked him why. But he had selected me before I got there to work in his unit. He liked for his guys, because they would have positions that you would work like 2 days in this unit, 3 days over here, and move them around. He tried to keep his where you did your whole shift, your whole 5-day shift in that unit. because then he could kind of he could control better how things ran in there. Because on death row, each one of those has like 3 attorneys assigned to them. And they might not be able to get them off of death row, but they're going to make them comfortable in there. And so every little, anything they can get you for, every time you don't.
They're looking for it.
Yeah. You shorted his tray, anything like that. They'll come after you for it.
Damn.
So, but it then makes the unit run smoother. But that was where I got assigned to right out of the gate.
Was
the
death
row.
Death row.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And we had toured it, but I didn't remember anything about it. And then the other guys in my class were like, "Oh man, how'd you get that lucky?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Oh, that's the easiest, smoothest running."
Yeah, is that like the mecca?
Is that
of
lucky
prison
though?
jobs?
Like that,
It feels like the most depressing
to me
spot.
that doesn't sound lucky, but
When you think about it in big picture, no. But once you're in there working, you understand why. The other inmates and the other units call that the country club. Because it's probably half of the guys were older guys that have been in prison for, some of them on death row for 20, 30 years. So they have their own system down because of all the attorneys and stuff they have. It's just a very well-run unit. And then they have, even though all death row inmates are considered a maximum security inmate, as long as they're in the physical unit, they have different levels, level A, B, and C. And so level A inmate, they have to work their way up to a level A on good behavior. And a level A inmate, they have their own kitchen. So he can be working in the kitchen. They're on the cleaning crew, like cleaning the pods, buffing the floors.
the unit has its own kitchen
Yeah, yep. Death row unit has its own
for
kitchen.
the inmates.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's the better food too, by far. Like if you're going to be locked up for life in Tennessee, you probably want to go to death row because chances are you're going to be there for 30 years before they execute you. And you get a pretty sweet gig if you can behave yourself.
Wow.
Because you'll get, I think they got up to 6 hours of rec. It was a lot more rec than normal.
Wow.
If you were on that good behavior.
Like that level A.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. What about like level B and C?
Level C was a normal maximum security inmate. You got 1 hour of rec. You were shackled everywhere you go with 2 COs. So that was a lot more intense. The level Bs, I think there was allowed 3 or 4 in a cage on the rec yard at a time. They got a few more hours, but not that much more. They get more phone time. But then the level As, I think it was allowed to be up to 12 inmates per CO. And they got, like I said, like 5 or 6 hours of rec time, basically unlimited phone time.
Wow.
So it was, and they all just worked. The phone was almost always being used, but they would just negotiate amongst each other, like, "Hey, I need the phone at 3 to 4 today," or whatever. So.
And what's the preferred method of execution in Tennessee? Is it lethal?
They have done a few of the electric chairs since then.
Jeez, okay.
They give them if you were sentenced within a certain time period, I don't remember when
You
it
get
is.
like an option?
You get the option between lethal and the electric chair. 2012 or 13, don't hold me to that, was the first time they had used the electric chair in like 60, in a long time.
Were you ever present for an execution?
All the execution involved people are anonymous.
Okay.
In the thing, so if I up and say someone's name, please bleep it out.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, we got
so,
you.
Yeah. Yeah. I did get to touch the electric chair. That was pretty, to most people that might sound gross. I don't
that's
know.
awesome.
But the history behind it, the electric chair is made out of the same wood that the hanging gallery,
The
whatever
noose.
it's made out of. Yeah. When the state had the official hanging platform thing, they used that same wood and made the electric chair that they now have. So it's dark, but it's crazy that
It's
that
cool
wood
history.
has held the end of the life for
And what's
hundreds
it
of people.
look like?
Yeah, is
the
it like
electric chair? What's
old
it?
school feel? Like
It's very well polished. Like they keep it very polished and clean, so it's very neat looking. But it's kind of almost like a straight up back. Has your spot for both of your legs to go in the bottom. I think it has the armrest. I think is just plain wood, if I'm remembering right.
And they
also
strap you.
Yep, they strap. I think it's 2 around your chest, and then I believe 2 on your arm and 2 on your legs. And they'll strap you in position. They weren't using it when I was there, but it had the little water bucket sitting next to it with
the sponge.
the sponges and stuff. Yep, and a little helmet piece was tossed across the back of the seat. Like they they definitely, I shouldn't say honor it, but it's a well-maintained, when you see it, you know it's not just something that's shoved off in a dusty corner somewhere. So,
and you know, it's weird too, is like, I would never, if I had the option of lethal injection or electric chair, I'm going injection every time, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that chair, pardon me, but just shoot me up with some fentanyl and send me on my way.
I don't think they shoot you up with fentanyl.
That is what they use. Fentanyl, they use Dilaudid.
Hold on, is that true?
We can go with that. No, I don't think it's fentanyl. Tennessee,
I feel like they have like certain chemicals.
So they give you
a
sedative.
Blast you
then
with
they give you no, they don't OD you. So they give you a sedative, then they give you a narcotic, and then they give you the thing that stops your heart, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, one
it's
puts
a 3-process thing.
Yeah, one is asleep, one is your heart, and the other one's your brain. I can't remember the third one, but yeah.
And you think they get just a little fetty in
I
there?
did. I had to write a report in college on this.
Did you
about
really?
boxed? Actually, yeah, about all the botched lethal injections.
Oh,
yeah. So I've done some.
Interesting.
But yeah, like I would. I'd much rather take my chances on getting whatever. You know, make it quick and
painless.
Yeah. But it turns out it's not actually quick and painless, allegedly. So,
yeah, the lethal injection, my personal belief is it's blown out of exaggeration a little bit. Because there was reporters saying when they executed Steve Henley, was the only inmate they executed in my short time there, and they were like, "Oh, he was gurgling." No, he wasn't. He was snoring.
You were there.
Allegedly.
I was employed there during that time.
Okay.
And so they strap you on your back, and you're laying facing up, and if you're any kind of overweight guy, you're going to snore. Or most guys, if you lay on your back and you fall asleep, you're going to snore. He was snoring. It was no gurgling. The dude was just snoring because they put him to sleep, and then he snores, and then they...
I just read about that, like, there's only been a few, but, like, when it happens, it's because the person they're executing is a former IV drug user, can't find a vein, so the thing falls out, or they can't find one, and that's how they get botched.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Could be.
So you get assigned Unit 2, and I'm assuming after a while you kind of find your groove, right?
Yeah.
You get more comfortable. Tell us about some memorable interactions with inmates, or any crazy things you saw that went down, or maybe something you were involved in. I mean, obviously working on death row is insane, and what we just talked about is insane, but there's still prison life, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
There's one in there of each type in the death row unit. Like they had some guys in there that they weren't that old, in their mid-60s or so. But when you're living in a concrete building eating prison food, you age a lot faster than you do in real life. So they had like one of each. They had a guy, I'm sure all the death row inmates' information is public, so I don't think you have to hide any of their names. But there was another young guy that I don't think he was on death row.
But he was on that unit.
He was housed in there, yeah.
Interesting.
They had him at Brushy Mountain for a while, which was Tennessee. Was like they would send the worst of their worst there, and through some lawsuits and stuff, he had gotten moved off of there. But the death row unit was then, I'm not sure why they chose to put him in there.
Was he like a porter or something over there, maybe?
I should just call Sarge and talk. I don't know if he would with this stuff now or not. He might. He was pretty cool and pretty open. But anyway, they had him there, and so he had gotten some officers killed on transportation. So maybe he was in trial waiting for his death sentence then.
Officers got killed transporting him somewhere?
Correct, yeah. I believe they were taking him to court, and he had gotten through some of the staff word to his girlfriend. His girlfriend had hit people set up, and when they pulled him out of the van, I know at least one officer was killed. I think two of them were killed.
Just shot?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he had escaped for a little bit, so.
Whoa.
Man.
He was a very, very smooth talking guy. He was just a little dude, probably 110 pounds soaking wet, but he was that very smooth talking guy, and he was very charming. He knew how to pressure you. Like, come on, man, you just inch. You know how to just inch and inch. Probably that's why they put him over there, because they had a better staffing system on Unit 2, and all your cameras and stuff were working. They could probably monitor him better, because if you only have one guy that's in there conniving you to that level, then there's a better chance. If you have a whole 20 guys in there doing that to you, it's harder to monitor everybody.
Right.
So probably that would be why they moved him over there. Yeah. but he would have been. Henry Hodges was the darkest person I ever met in my life. I didn't think he was in the news just a couple of years ago for trying to cut his own penis off. You guys see that?
No.
I missed that headline.
One,
Yeah, I missed that one.
I love that story.
Okay,
though.
so Henry Hodges.
Penis cutting.
Google that. Just
When
Google
you
Henry
say
Hodges cuts his penis off.
When you say the darkest person you've ever met, what does that mean?
He got a rush off of hurting people, but he was also one of them guys that's very quiet. He's older now, but back then, he was a very quiet, like mostly even the other inmates in there didn't like him. He was what they call a special pie flap inmate, to where he didn't just have the
Single.
pie flap. They were all in single cells, but he didn't have just the pie flap where you would tray their food in. His had like a drawer outside where you would put the food in the drawer, lock that door, and then open the pie flap on the inside. Because he had cut several officers, he knew how to just be slick and he just grab your arm and pull it through the pie flap and just take a knife and just start.
Golly.
And he would get high as a kite he would get high talking about that stuff. You could see his face. He was just like.
So like a sociopath.
He was psycho.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Do you ever get like feces or anything? You ever see any of that? Him throwing poop and pee on people?
Have you ever caught any of that?
In Unit 2, no. But in the other units, they did. They wouldn't mix up. They wouldn't flush their toilet for a while, and they'd soak like toilet paper in there and then shit in it and stir it all together.
God, that's the worst.
There's a name for it.
Like
I can't
a
remember
nice
what they
soup.
called it.
Yeah, that's nice.
And then they would but we had the solid doors in front of them, so they couldn't. You'd have to be pretty careless for them to actually get it on you. But they'll throw it like under the door, or something at you.
What about
to get you
the
and you
pie
step in and
flaps?
stuff.
The flaps,
Yeah, they could get you through that
Yeah,
if you weren't careful. But if it's an inmate that you know about or you've watched and he hasn't flushed his toilet in a day or two, like you just don't open his pie flap and be like, listen, you get your food when you flush that toilet.
Yep.
So
Okay. Okay.
But they still, when you're doing that stuff all day long, you let your guard down for that 1 second, or it might not even be the guy that you had a coil with. He might have hired this guy to freaking hit you.
Yep.
And so you're like, well, I've never had a problem with this guy. Next thing you know, you got a face full of shit. Or they'll go and, like, if they're having issues and they don't want to, if they know the extraction team is coming in on them, they will sometimes like rub their feces all over the inside of the prison
for
wall.
our viewers, when you say the extraction team, what is that, and when would they be used?
Basically the maximum security inmates, whether they're maximum security because of that or they will kind of have a mental meltdown and they'll just be like, I'm not getting out of my cell. And by law, they have to take so many showers a week. They have to eat. They can't refuse their meds. And so if you refuse your meds or you taking a pie flap hostage, where they'll stick their arm out and won't let you close it, then the extraction team will have to go in and get them. And that's when, if they know that's coming, some of them, not nearly all of them, but some of them will rub feces.
Get ready for war.
They'll strip down butt naked and rub feces all over themselves.
Those are the crazy
Because
ones, man.
they're
You know they're coming in 10 deep, and you're just
if you're coming in, you're gonna get dirty. Like that's their.
Oh.
And isn't it exhausting mentally to just always, like, you're working whatever 8-10 hour shift, whatever it is, to just always be like hyper vigilant and like, doesn't that take a toll on you?
It really does. It really does. You're always on edge, but yet it gets boring because you're doing the same thing over and over again. So it's like you live on a kind of an adrenaline rush that never happens.
See, it's
that's so good.
It's so different from what I did because my guys were short timers. They were all of them. They were going home 6 months or less.
Oh yeah.
And so, like, for me, I got to try and help, right? Like, I was able to help. Your guys aren't going anywhere. Ever.
Yes, they're waiting to be executed.
They're waiting
so they don't
to
have
die.
anything to lose.
Yes.
Nothing to lose.
Yep.
So, yeah.
That's why Tennessee, I think they were the only state that did the levels.
Like the good behavior.
Yes, because it gave them something to work for and to thrive for. And it worked. It worked really well. Most of the guys, probably half of them were level A's, but some of them had been a level A inmate for years and years and years because they learned the system and how it works, and like, hey, if I want to be outside in the cage instead of in my cell in a cage for 5 or 6 hours out of the day, this is what I got to do.
Yeah.
So it did work. It does. Yeah.
What's your craziest personal experience prison guard story, or a couple of them if you got a couple that.
Probably the one that sticks with me the most, and this one might not be as bad to some people, but I was in Unit 2 and they called a medical code down in Unit 1, I think no, it's not, it's Unit 3 that's straight across from us. And one of the guys on max security, so he leaves his cell 1 hour a day to go to the rec yard, had tried to commit suicide. And he had sitting on the toilet. And this stuff get graphic? Is this too much?
Yeah,
no,
please.
No, you're good.
He was sitting on the toilet.
So we want the truth.
And had sliced his wrists, and they found him because there was blood running out from under his cell door.
Oh boy!
And he was pale as a ghost. Like he looked like
he's on the brink of
much
death.
Less.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you come into the unit, and you're like, well, there's the.
Yeah.
So
That's
I felt bad for the nurse. She had to walk in, and the COs. You have to go in, and you're literally walking through human blood to go help this guy. And he was so bled out by that point, because sometimes they will do that stuff as a stage to get you to rush in just so they can fight.
Yeah.
For the entertainment of it. But
Sure.
no, he was legitimately
Trying to off himself.
Yeah. Yep. And that stuck with me. Just it's not like the most gross. We had another inmate that tried to, not Henry Hodges, but one before that, tried to cut off his dick. That's
hell?
pretty graphic.
Why do you do that? Why do you is it for you just need some kind of rec or entertainment to do while you're in there? Like that wouldn't be my preferred method.
Right.
Yeah, me either.
The official report is he was hearing voices, and he was on medication, but he was hearing voices.
So he was like well known, like schizophrenic, something serious.
Yes, I'm blanking on
mental
his name,
health
but
issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And he said that he kept hearing voices in the wall telling him to f his mother, and he didn't want to do it. And so the voices kept haunting him for several days. And so he was like, you know what? If I just cut it off, I ain't got to.
You ain't gonna worry about it.
But there were other inmates on the yard later bragging about, oh yeah, I was just with him. So other inmates, I think, this is totally not on the books anywhere, but other inmates were kind of torturing him just because they all get bored. Like if you're in the same routine for 25 years, if you can get someone else to do something crazy without getting you in trouble.
It's like us with Jimmy.
I mean, we were locked up together, and we did that with this one guy, and we weren't even.
It wasn't even that.
It's not like we were sitting there for 25 years. We just wanted some entertainment, so we'd hype this dude up to go do something stupid, so we could laugh at it, and we did it all the time.
What do you do with the like? Who goes in and collects the up?
He didn't cut it all the way off.
Okay,
he didn't get the angle right.
Salvageable.
Yeah. He was cutting like at a 45 from the top back.
So it's going like, oh.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
If you need to, but he was cutting like the fat. He was cutting into his man fat.
Yeah, like the.
So he wasn't
at
cutting
a
it straight
45
down.
Instead of a 90-degree.
He wasn't even cutting his. He was just cutting like the
his
pube
stomach
area.
above. Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
And who cleans up all the blood and all that shit?
They took him to the hospital, and the doctor. This is graphic, but the doctor went in up to his pinky, scraping out the the clotted up blood. Like he went at least that deep. And he stitched him back up, and I'd say within a few weeks, maybe not even that long, he was back on the unit again.
How many COs do you send out with a guy like that on a death row unit that's going to the hospital? Like, what's security look like for that? Because I have to imagine it's pretty serious.
With him being death row, and my memory's rusty on all this stuff, but he would have normally had 3 vans. They'll have tinted windows, you can't tell which van he's in, but there'll be 3 vans in a row. You would assume the center one's carrying him with a chase van and a lead van, but it's not always that way. They'll mix it up to keep people from attacking. So there'd be 2, they're not COs, there'd be corporals in each vehicle going out. So, yeah.
2 in each, so 6 total.
So it'd be
What's
6
a
total
corporal?
people. Yep.
Big, the head.
First thing above the CO.
Okay.
So
they
had
boss.
White shirts.
There was something different on them, but I can't remember even now.
Okay.
I think we all had there was a difference, but I couldn't tell you. If I seen it now, I'd be like, oh yeah, that was corporal. But yeah.
So they'd send 6 guys out with 1 inmate.
With him being death row, I don't know this, but it would be very normal for them to contact the state police, and they would go
get like an escort from them. Too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because not only are you trying to protect him or trying to keep him from escaping, but if his victims' families are like, you know who's on the way to the hospital? And you're responsible for, which is hilarious because you're keeping him alive so you can kill him.
So you can kill him later.
Right.
Still,
No.
Yeah, but it's the courts.
It's the
carry out
law.
the sentence.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you got to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Those are intense.
So how long are you working on? Are you still in the prison system? No. I'm
No,
assuming, right?
no,
Okay.
I gave that up like 14 months into it. I'm like, this is
Okay.
just too much. It's
Too
not.
much.
And mentally, it will just tear you apart.
I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah,
I could
you're
not.
going out to.
What was the most enjoyable part of the job, if you had to pick one? And why?
I think.
Do you ever get to have conversations with some of these guys and like pick their brains or like?
Yeah, on death row I did, because those you're with the same inmates all the time.
Yeah.
So I did there, yes. Probably that was the most enjoyable part. Is just, and a lot of them would still not be completely honest with you, and they'd still, some of them would still deny doing it. Some of them were like, well, I was.
You're the
strung up.
police, no matter what. You're the police. Even the guys where I was at, they knew that I had been convicted of felonies. They knew I had been locked up, but I still had keys. I still had a radio. Like I was still a cop to them, no matter what. They can't see past that.
Yes. Yep.
Like they don't see a human. They see the police.
It's this side of the door versus that side.
Yeah.
But probably the most interesting part was just getting to see other humans like that, and we're from the same species, the same people, but so drastically different.
Yeah.
And in reality, a lot of the death row guys were strung up on drugs, or they were chasing drug money, and that's when I learned that drugs is not just like, oh, I feel happy. No, those people will literally kill people to get that extra $60 to go get that feeling again.
Oh yeah.
How much drug use did you see, or how much drug use was going on in that unit, and how do you think it got in, or how would it get in?
It had to come in through 3 ways. They didn't have a ton of it, or if they did, they hit it really well on death row.
Because I feel like it'd be tough on death row to make something like that happen.
Yeah.
Just logically.
Not a lot of in and out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like not a lot of wiggle room to make that happen. So tell us about that.
They can get it in either through staff, or through the food service, or through visitation, where visitors will come in and, visitors will stick a tube up their butt and bring in. We had found cell phones and stuff. Cell phones was probably the most common thing you would find trying to get smuggled in. Cell phones and cigarettes.
Which is crazy. A cell phone up your butt, like.
Yeah. Oh, dude.
How does that work? You know.
them.
Well, just
Jesus.
they're just little flip phones.
But still, like.
You know?
Biggest one that I saw that I was like, dude, and I don't know if they ever found who put that in there, but the guy somebody had brought it in and hid it in the ceiling, the bathroom ceiling of the visitation, which is dumb. They had a drop ceiling in a prison bathroom visitation ceiling.
The worst. Yeah.
Oh,
like,
it's so dumb.
Who
But
made that?
they had found, it was a flip phone, the charger, 2 packs of cigarettes. I think the cigarette lighter was all wrapped up and it was like in a baggie with electric tape and then lubed up with like a Vaseline or something over it. And that was a big, that thing was like probably 2 inches in diameter. I'm going to say 5 or 6 inches long.
I mean,
It was
a
a
pack
big
of
thing.
cigarettes.
Yeah. I looked at that and I was like, even if it's a girl that had that up there, like I don't want to.
Yeah.
That's a lot. It's a lot.
You had some practice. That was not your first time bringing
It
something
wasn't
in.
covered in blood too.
No, it was all like lotion up in Vaseline and
It was
stuff.
ready
make
to
it
roll.
slippery.
Ready, man.
No, it was already in. They had already brought it in. And it was in the
and
ceiling.
that's where they
waiting
hid
for the
it.
pickup.
Yeah, it was waiting for the
Okay.
cleaning inmate to go pick it up and deliver it.
I got you. Okay.
Oh, that sounds like because like as smugglers ourselves, Lou, like we
That's
were only
wild.
doing I was only doing like a half pack of cigarettes, not in the pack, a charger in the phone. Oh man,
I mean, yeah, it's a lot.
How would you?
up the old prison wallet.
But you were not in the pack.
The
So were you doing them one at a time?
No, you stick them. You take a glove.
Yeah, the facility we were in, we had work release where we were together.
Okay.
And it's weird. It is like a prison block, but there was work release.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we could leave and we'd take the thumb of a glove.
Yep.
And we would one
Pack
by
up.
one pack it up with as many cigarettes as you're willing to, bring home with you. And you tie it up, you put it in a couple different glove fingers, so it's wrapped numerous times, tie it up real tight, shoot her up there.
Right on in she goes.
And you bring her in. See, it's the way you're not going to get caught.
It's guaranteed.
Guaranteed, you're not going to get caught.
Did it make you guys do the bent squat and cough thing?
See, I don't feel like that's accurate. I could put something in my butt right now, and I could I could do a little like squat and cough show.
Yeah.
And I don't think it works like that.
I think if you, inmates have said that too. If you know how to do it and you make it go up far enough.
Exactly.
And then,
It also depends on the staff member that's checking because, let's be
yeah.
honest, some of them are lazy.
Let's be honest, I was one of those guys.
And
You're the lazy guy?
The inmates know, though. The inmates know who's lazy,
Who's sweet,
not.
who's not
like,
sweet.
We knew that stuff. And you try to plan around that, but yeah, that's.
But yeah, imagine sticking a phone charger in there,
there's
bro.
no way.
I don't know
That's
if I
where
could
I
do
draw.
it.
I draw the line there.
There's no amount of money or drugs. Yeah.
What kind of drugs are you seeing in there?
Mostly weed. If there was, it would be like weed.
Really?
I'm sure they had other stuff, but I was so naive. I paid just enough attention. My only drug experience was with going through the academy, and so you could have had a line of Coke in front of me, and I'd be like, "Oh, powdered sugar."
Powder, yeah. It's for the coffee.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
did you ever bust anybody with drugs or doing drugs or?
I wrote up an inmate. This was when I first started. I became pretty lenient, like pretty much. Fairly early on, I started seeing them as human beings, and if you treat them like that, like if you're
Respect.
this is my perspective, and this is why I don't work in the prison system. But what you do on your time, if you're not hurting anybody else, I don't freaking care.
Yeah.
If you do 5 lines and you're passed out for 10 days, did you hurt anybody else? I mean, it sucks to be you, but that's you. Like,
Sure.
I don't care. And I developed that. But before that, there was an inmate that I found some unidentifiable pills that were unmarked pills in bottles. I think this was pretty early on because that corporal did the write-up and all that stuff on it. So I don't know whatever happened out of that. But so I guess I could have one experience of having caught a guy, well, 2. I caught another guy smoking on a rec yard, which I wouldn't have said anything
Smoking
about.
a cigarette?
Smoking weed.
Oh, smoking weed, okay.
But you can do it and pretend I don't see it or whatever. But
could
if you're just
smell it a mile
openly doing
away.
and if you're just openly doing it on
don't
a
be
rec
an
yard,
idiot.
like don't
Be an asshole about
Don't
it.
put my job at risk for you to go relax. Like
Exactly.
so, and on the rec yards they had cameras everywhere, so he knew he was on camera.
Just flagrantly.
idiot. Yeah.
I mean, what's it matter if he's
Yeah,
not
I'm
going
live.
home?
And what's the punishment? Is there a hole? I know they don't call it the hole anymore, but like segregated, whatever, seg-u.
Isolation, segregation.
He got dropped from an A level down to a C level.
Okay.
So now
so-
he's got to be a C level for like 2 years and a B
Oh.
level
Is
for
it
2
2
It takes that
years.
long?
Yeah.
Golly.
Oh, that would be devastating.
That'd be.
Yeah, they were.
That's a long time.
He wasn't happy.
What? Yeah, but he did it. I mean,
Yeah,
like you're a dumbass.
Some of the COs wouldn't care. They'll stand there, carry a conversation with them through the cage while they're smoking, and I think he just
Really?
didn't.
He's got too cute with it.
Yeah, I think he. I don't know. I don't know if he just thought I wouldn't. I don't know what he thought about it. But then as soon as I said something to him, he just rubbed it all out and just rumbled it all like because he just had a little bit left and he just destroyed it all on a rec yard. So where's your evidence? Well, the camera back there that sees
one,
me
that
seeing
one,
you
that
do it.
one. Yeah, me.
God.
Yeah.
So you don't feel like there was like a rampant drug problem in that unit specifically that you were assigned to?
Not openly, no.
Okay.
If there, I'm sure they did, but they,
Well, sure.
they and probably, well, it's just kind of if you keep it to yourself, don't make a, you know what I mean?
You don't make a scene of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Don't make me make you stop. And so,
Right.
and it was a lot of older guys, so there wasn't as much fighting. And like, if they'd have started having a lot of fighting or bickering back and forth and stuff, then Sarge had been like, okay, we're gonna strip the whole unit down and start over. But yeah,
Wow.
you have 3
And
lawyers
how-
working for you. You get by with a lot of stuff.
And death row too. Like I think Hollywood glamorizes a little bit too, but like executions don't happen that often, right? Because it's like there's a process, really lengthy process. How many people are actually gone? Like, is there ever like, well, Frank, you're up this week. See you later, brother.
Not that much in Tennessee. When I was there, they had, I think it was 89 death row inmates.
Yeah.
And
You said you
in
saw
the 14
one.
months, they had 1 execution because it was held up in the courts from the lethal injection stuff was controversial during that time. They have executed since, and I think they're down to only 45 death row inmates now.
Okay.
40
So
or
about
something.
half, and that's been what 20 years or whatever.
2008, 2009.
Okay.
Oh, gee whiz, that is coming up on 20 years.
Yeah, almost 20 years.
Getting old.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
16 years, yeah.
Wow. But yeah, they've cleaned
So
a
it doesn't
lot of them out
happen
since
that
then.
often.
No, I think
Okay.
now they do a couple a year, basically trying to get caught up from during all that time. They
And
were,
what happens is just like
trying to get
you go to death row and like your numbers because like you're getting probably way more in than you're taken out, right? So it's like how many? What's the whole like? The numbers don't add up, right? Like if you keep going adding people to death row, only 2 or 3 are getting executed a year.
Correct. And they'll get a death sentence, and maybe 2 or 3 years later, the sentence will get overturned to something else.
To like life.
Yep,
So then they go to.
and then they'll go back out because they get.
Okay.
Tennessee has changed it since I think in 2007. They changed where you would get 7 appeals or so many years. Where before that, they almost had an unlimited amount of appeals, and so their attorneys knew to wait, let the
Certain amount of time.
get up within a few months of their execution
File an
date,
appeal.
then reappeal it. The court will accept the appeal,
Then it's
and now you're through the whole
right
process
from the
again.
beginning.
Yeah, and so that's how those guys would die of natural causes on death row. They've had several of them die, quote unquote, of natural causes, since I've left there.
Wow.
So it's yeah. Gregory Thompson is one of the guys at age 52 died of natural causes in prison.
Natural causes.
So
at
I'm not
52.
quite sure. He was one of them C-level inmates that I personally, for some reason, he was like 6'7". He's a big dude.
Ooh.
He was one of only like 4 or 5 inmates that was able to kick a door off of its hinges.
God.
He literally could kick a cell door. He's done it
A
before.
cell door?
Yes, he kicked the cell door off of its hinges.
God.
By the time I met him, let's see, he
What?
died in 2000. He would have been in his upper 40s, I think, during the time I knew him. So he had mellowed down quite a bit. They had him on different meds to dumb him down. But he was an interesting. I was probably the most scared I've ever been in prison.
That's
That'd probably be my most scared
that's
moment.
a big boy. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not that big, man, and like there was one guy that I wrote up. He was on his way home. He had just done like 10 years for a murder for hire case. He was gonna like kill some lady for like $3,500. And when I tell you this dude,
3,500,
this
bro.
dude was like 6'7" and like 350, just I mean massive. And he did something, and I had to write him up. I had to because it was in front of other inmates, and if I let that one go, then
Yep.
Yeah.
and I was just like, oh my God. They called him Big Fick, and most terrifying inmate I'd ever seen. And I was like, if this doesn't go well, I could lose my life today. This could be the end for
That's
Lewis.
dead blue. Who
God.
charges $3,500 to whack somebody? That's lowballing.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Lowballing.
It was nuts. I
Yeah.
know.
Golly. At least 10.
Gregory had his nickname was Jelly Roll because he had kind of a belly on him there by the
Okay.
end. He's kind of a pot-bellied dude. But I had always gotten along good with him. I'm not sure what. I can't remember what triggered it. But some of them inmates, you do something just right and don't even realize it. And they're like, oh, you're cool. And the guard goes
And the
down.
next
and
thing,
they're-
you're public enemy number 1.
Yeah. But there was another CO, a skinny, lanky, built
Kinda
kind of
like
you.
me.
Yeah. That come in there and he was so stringent and so, I don't know. Bless his heart if he's ever listened to this.
Was he super strict?
Super strict.
Just
And
thought he was tougher than he was.
And for some reason, Jelly Roll would push back on him. Long story short, I'm sitting in the pod, because the inmates were all locked off. And I'm sitting in the pod, and someone on the radio calls out the wrong, because all of our doors were open electronically from the unit control center. And so you get radio up like Charlie 3, and they would pop the door for you.
Yep.
Someone called out the wrong door, and they popped his door.
Oh.
And I heard, as soon as I heard on the radio, I'm like, that's Jelly Roll's door, and I knew it wasn't. And the freaking scrawny CO was over there by the door, and he heard it on his radio. And he turns around and looks, and Jelly Roll walks over the door, and he's like, "Oh, it's on now, you motherfucker!"
Ooh.
And I could not do it now, but my brain just kicked, and I just walked over. I'm like, "Come on, you don't want to. It's not worth your
You
time to do this."
de-escalated?
Yeah, and I just stood in front of this dude that's like 6'7", and he's like, "Beechy, you're lucky. He's lucky I love you." And he just went back, sat on his bed, and I just closed his door and walked
like,
away. And the officer looked at me,
Saved
and his
that
face
dude's
was
life.
ghost white. And like,
Fucking
dude,
scrawny just had a brush
yeah.
with death.
that was a great example of why you freaking treat everybody fair in there. Because if I'd
respect.
if it had been that CO, if he'd have been closer,
Yeah,
he would
over
have
with.
never
Even
stood
lunch.
a chance with
Yeah.
that guy.
And Homeboy's already set to die, so what's another one?
Yeah,
you can't
and he's
go-
already a C-level inmate. He'll
Yeah.
probably never make
Oh.
the higher level
yeah.
because of his personality and stuff. And yeah, Yep,
Wow.
treat people like people. I don't
Yeah.
care who they are. Treat them
Yeah.
like people. If
I
they're
agree.
dangerous, then lock them up. But at the
I
end of the
agree.
day, they're still a human being on the other side of the door. They're just a crazy one.
I agree.
Dang,
So-
brother.
When did you finally hang it up, and what's life been like since then?
About 14 months into it, about 8 or 9 months into it, I realized it wasn't for me. It's too stressful. I didn't have family down there, so even when I wasn't in at the prison, I was either at the bars or I was hanging out by myself, and mentally it's just not. It'll wreck you.
Mm-hmm.
So I quit in like February, March, April, around April or so of 2009. That's when I quit. I left there. I struggled with depression, trying to find my place in life because I realized then I don't want to do law enforcement either. So let's see. I went out in PA, started working in the oil field. We're still back and forth there a lot for oil field work and other stuff. My wife and I started our own trucking company.
Okay.
Like, what is it, 16-wheeler, 18-wheelers, whatever they are?
18-wheelers, yeah. Yep. So we do
How's
trucking.
how's that going right now? The market's crap. I used to work in logistics.
Did
so,
you?
Yeah.
Oh, it's
I was
rough.
I was a broker, so.
Oh,
I
were
was,
you?
Yeah.
Oh,
So you
okay.
can beat them up after.
Right?
We
Man,
go
if
out
I knew
there.
that.
I was one of
Yeah.
the one, but I wasn't one of those ones that would yell at drivers and shit like some of them do.
I don't blame them. There's a lot of drivers out there that are, well, just freaking light-up brokers.
Yeah.
Like,
To get a load, yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, or they'll book a load. Brokers do the same thing. They'll book the truck, and then they keep searching if they can find another truck to it for
Then
$50
they're-
less. Like, oh, that
Kick
load
off the
canceled.
other
Like,
guy.
no, I just seen.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
a crazy world, but trucking is tough. Trucking is tough. And then the wife and I farm on the side. We have some beef cows. We have goats and sheep and goats and pigs right now too. But and then a small YouTube channel where I just started posting stuff for.
Right on.
Where I post trucking videos, the kids with the critters. me
What's the
feeding
name of the
animals.
channel?
Beechy Life Stuff.
Beachy life stuff.
Beachy
Yeah.
life stuff.
Yep. Long form videos are on YouTube and Rumble, and then I do short like reels on
Facebook and
Facebook, TikToks, all
Nice.
the other places. So
Do you ever
It's fun.
you in contact with any of the old, like your dad? You said he's still Amish. You ever talk to him? Ever go down and see
I
him?
seen him. Yeah, I want to have a good relationship with my dad, but every time I see him, I just remember. You know, when you see somebody and you're just like, I just don't want
Yeah,
to.
It
yeah.
just triggers a.
I seen him one time in the past. See, my wife was 3 months pregnant with my daughter, and she's 6, coming up on 7 now. So I've seen him one time since then.
In 7 years, or
Yeah.
whatever.
I ran into him at a farm. I knew he would be at that farm auction, and I was all excited. I was like, oh, it'd be good to see him again. Like, you know, let bygones be. And as
Yeah,
soon as
yeah,
I
yeah.
seen him, I was just like, I just don't want to.
What's he
So-
like? What do you think his impression of you now is? Like, wow, he's sold out.
Depends on who he's with on what his impression is.
Okay.
My dad's control with his emotions and the people around him. So
Yeah.
when he's around us, he would be very proud of us. Like he's always liked trucks and engines and like mechanical. So he's fascinated with semis. He would, in a heartbeat, like if you open the hood of a semi up, he'd be over there looking
Right.
around like, oh, the engines are such and such. And like he
Right.
gets into that stuff, which is hilarious when you're like a big old fat Amish dude with a big
With
rim
a
hat.
giant rim,
and
yeah.
You know engines. So on my, I guess I have a good face relationship. I don't know if that's the right word, but when I see him, I'm friendly with him. But we went to see him because my daughter's my oldest kid. So when wife got pregnant, we went to tell him in person, and then that was it. So
What's your daughter
unfortunately,
think of all this Amish business? She knows her roots or what?
They say some really funny stuff about it. Yeah, they have a hard time like. They struggle connecting when they see Amish people, like realizing that their dad was
That
one of
used
those
to be
dudes
my
one
dad.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
funny.
yeah. And so they'll say things like, just a couple days ago, my son, he's 4, asked me, like, when you were Amish, did you watch some TV show he was watching? I'm like, no, we didn't have
Yeah,
TVs.
we
like,
didn't have a television.
he just gives you that look like,
What? How's that
you
possible?
didn't have
yeah.
a.
Were you
yeah, his
poor?
brain doesn't
Yeah,
go.
Yeah,
He's just
you
like,
can't compute it.
Dad's lying to me. There's no way he didn't have a
Yeah.
TV.
That's absolutely insane, brother.
Thanks for sharing your story, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
first death row prison guard we've had on, and I learned a lot.
First Amish.
Yeah, well, yeah, first
Right.
Amish
Breaking
too.
barriers
That's true.
here.
Should have worn my hat in here.
The brim, yeah.
Yeah, you should
Like,
have.
bro, your brim is not big enough. You gotta
Right.
go. Yeah.
Just you Photoshop
Yeah,
it, and just
yeah.
spin it all the way around. Yeah, big white brim all the way around.
We appreciate you coming, man. Great job. Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Appreciate it,
you
man.
guys having me on.
Of course.
Great podcast.